So my name is Joan Cox. I'm a painter. I'm based in Baltimore. And this painting on the wall is the oldest painting in the room. I might not have necessarily included it in this exhibition, except for the fact that 2 whole years ago, it was selected to be part of this performance that you can see on the video here by the Gay Men's Chorus of Washington, D.C. in a special project called the Portraits Project, where they did a call for entry for portraits around the country, and they chose 9 portraits to be projected on stage and to have original score written for, original lyrics written for, and original choreographed dance. And this process of creation took more than 2 years. Thea, who's the artistic director in the room right here from the Gay Men's Chorus, she spearheaded the project. It took 4 years since they sort of thought of the idea. And it came to fruition just this year in June and was performed at the Kennedy Center here in DC. So realizing that was happening in June and this solo exhibition was happening right here in Washington, D.C., I thought I've got to find a way to bring that painting, put it on the wall, and share that performance because it's so beautifully written. It's an amazing kind of feeling to have your own work of art responded to by other artists, by choreographers, by musicians, by a lyricist. So as we're talking, you'll see the words that the lyricist wrote to the painting do go up on the screen. And it's my life. It's pretty clear to me what it's all about, but to share a few words about it, it's a self-portrait clearly with myself and my partner, and the blankets, which are now returned right here in the room because they were on stage as part of the choreography. The blankets tell part of a story, right? One's very masculine, one's more feminine, one's traditional. The view that you can see on stage was recreated by 2 male dancers when it was performed in Minneapolis and by 2 women dancers when it was performed here in DC. And I love that flexibility too, that it could be portrayed by any gender, but by being a non-typical couple, right? A non-heterosexual couple is the message. And the lighting in the painting itself is very theatrical with that solid black background and sort of a spotlight. It's an intimate moment in our private lives, but we're allowing you as the viewer right in. But our gazes are saying like, hey, this is our space, right? We're owning, this is our space, and we want you to accept us and welcome us, but it's still our private world. So this painting is called Night Hunger. And so that's the reason it's over here, and it was a really amazing thing to be a part of. There's one of the other artists in the room too who had her piece, Linda Lowry in the back, performed as well. So in hanging the show, I wanted to show some interiors, right? So they kind of go around the room this way with all couples, and then exterior garden, glorious garden nature views over here. But when you think of a portrait, at least always when I think of a portrait, you think of like one person. You think of a presidential portrait or somebody important, and they're just sort of very formal and dry. These portraits are far from that. Bringing in a second person, bringing in 2 people in a couple creates a narrative where it's almost like a mini movie or a novel where you can start to learn about their personalities. Things are being revealed, from color choices to patterns in fabrics that are personal, to the scenarios, this case a bedroom, a floor. The floor piece in particular, I was trying to capture every color of potential skin tone subtly. It captured in the floor, in the wood, right? But it presents the idea that every single color of skin tone is there and is beautiful. And that figure there who's really gazing out, and that's the one we used for the title for the Sapphic Gaze promotions and everything, because her gaze is so strong and so engaging and so lovely. And I thought it was really one of the strongest portraits that I had ever painted. So going around the room then this story over here is a couple who, their names are Jane and Autumn. And Autumn was pregnant with Angus, whose birthday is today. He's now like 5 years old. So they're not here. They're busy having a birthday party for their little redheaded baby boy. But I love working with them as models because Jane is so gender neutral that at first you might come into a museum or gallery and feel like, oh, that's just, whatever. That's just a painting of a couple, right? Until you kind of get closer or examine some of the small signs that feminize her a little bit more and let you know that this is not your stereotypical couple. And I don't know about you, but as a 50 plus, almost 55-year-old person who's been going to museums my whole life, I've never seen a painting of a lesbian couple in the way that a typical Western art, beautiful, big oil painting. I've never walked into a gallery or a museum and seen myself on that wall. And that's what I want to create with these paintings. And I want them to get to those walls someday, into the museum walls where others can also see that and see themselves. And I'm always also putting a little nod to historic artists and paintings. In this piece over here, the small daylilies up there, what are they called? Morning glories. That's a little mini Georgia O'Keeffe replica. Just up in the window pane. It's in fact used on the cover of one of her books of all of her work. And then I added additional ones that are growing inside the room, so it's bringing nature in and out. And the title of that piece is The Origin of the Family, which is a play on Gustave Courbet's famous portrait of a nude woman, which is called The Origin of Life? No, The Origin of the Universe, right? Origin of the World. In French, it's translated, right? The Origin of the Universe. So to me, her belly is painted like a universe. It's swirling with life and future and like the whole macrocosm and a microcosm there in her belly. But she's not laying there, again, the title of the show, Sapphic Gaze, she's not laying there in the typical Western painterly way where nudes were painted for the male gaze, for men basically to have an excuse to paint nude women. They painted all kinds of mythical Greek figures just for an excuse to paint nude women who are always like with their eyes closed, just to be looked at. And all of my figures are clearly looking right back at you, like they're perfectly comfortable in their worlds and they're not just to be stared at. Each of these paintings, they're sharing their own world. This one, they're much more engaged with each other than staring out, and the feeling that it's, this is called In the Garden of Autumn. It feels like the garden of Adam and Eve. It's more like Eve and Eve. But when I was working on it, this really is their real garden in the city in Baltimore, and not an ounce of skyline anywhere in sight. It's just a wild jungle of tomatoes versus apples in the traditional story. And while I was working on the piece, the back was 100% ivy, dark, and it needed some kind of light to it. And I was walking the dogs, and I saw this vine just growing everywhere, blooming this little white flower. I was like, is that honeysuckle? And I grabbed a snatch piece home and looked it up, and it's called Sweet Autumn. It's a vine, and her name is Autumn. I was like, this is divine. So the title of the piece is then In the Garden of Autumn. But I used those little flowers to really highlight Jane and kind of give her a halo, because I painted her almost to blend completely into the fabric of nature. But I also wanted her to glow and have that bit of a halo effect. This piece here is the most recent. I just finished, and if I even brought a brush, I'd probably still be working on my face right now in the gallery. This piece is called Family Totem. Followed by a few of the names. Family Totem, Cox, McCall, Asplin, Funk, Gallagher, O'Boyle. So it's got a few family names. The thing is, this is myself, my partner, our child, back when she was maybe 5, because she's a little older now, and our dogs in our neighborhood, in a tree that's in our neighborhood that everyone climbs. So I started the piece like this epic totem family portrait. And at the same time I began working on it, I visited my dad for Father's Day, and he got to talking about, well, my mother always said we were from royalty. And I was like, yeah, right. everyone likes to think that. But he had been on Ancestry a couple years prior and found all kinds of records, right, going back to the 1500s. And I thought, I'm going to get on Ancestry again and see if he's right? Are we really from royalty? So I got back on Ancestry, and lo and behold, in the last 5-10 years, I mean, there's so many even more records on there than there used to be. And us being a very primarily English family on both my mother's side and father's side, English, the UK, they kept the records like crazy, record after record after. So it was just click, oh, the parent, oh, this, we think your potential mother or the potential father, potential grandfather. So I was kind of going down a wormhole till 2 in the morning every night for a whole summer. and thought, what am I going to do? These names are exploding, these stories, these potential ideas, all these people, who they were. What am I going to, can I print this out? Can I make a big, can I order something? And then I went in the studio and went, oh yeah, let me just paint that on the tree, a real family tree. I didn't intend it to be like a typical family tree, but I wanted the names to feel like the bark. This particular tree's got that real rough bark on it. And so I just began down here with my mother's name and her father and so on. And then the next line is my father's name and his mother and his father, and on, alternating lines, and going while I'm painting with the computer next to me going, wait, okay, I need another name up here. I need another name on this branch. And I kept going branch after branch after branch after branch for months. And I did find King Edward III. I did, it took a little bit of time, but I found King Edward III. So, and numerous other interesting, amazing stories and interesting people. I found that I'm from Maryland from pre-colonial times. So for 400 years in Dorchester County on my mother's side. Basically, Lord Baltimore, right up over my head is Sir Leonard Lord Baltimore Calvert. So the Calvert County, Lord Baltimore was his nickname. He was the first colonial governor of Maryland. And also in the family line, probably it was like his daughter married the son of the first colonial governor of Virginia. So I have that person's name on my, lots of sirs and ladies and knights. And here and there, one little French name, one little Danish name, one couple of Irish names, things like that. So for me, it turned into a really personal piece and a way to honor all of these names and these people that you forget and that your kids forget and their kids forget. And, you know, we're all just maybe 50 years in touch with the previous, you know, and then boom, it's gone. Like it just gets erased. And especially as women most women who change their names, right, for their paternal or their marriage name, like you're losing that name, the next generation's losing the name. So I found a way to capture all of those names. It did initially look like a big blackboard, right? It just was like really flat. And then I went and I had to glaze colors over top and bury, and it kind of hurt to bury some of the names, but I had to make it look like a tree. And then have the sun hit it, and you know, when you walk around different angles, different names jump out. And I'm hoping that people come and look for their own surname. You might be on here, right? I mean, especially if you have any English heritage at all, but there's some German, all different histories there. So to me, it's an epic totem, as I said. And then some other just beautiful symbolic things. Here to Washington, D.C., the cherry blossoms. We've always been massive fans. So that dress doesn't exist. It's a pattern invented for the painting, which is the benefit of being a painter versus a photographer. You can just add in details and take out details. And Alexis wearing her tiger face paint was the very first time we took her to the zoo, and she got her face painted as a tiger, and I just felt like that was the right mood to put up there and put on the tree. And our dogs' names, by the way, are Freddie, and I've got some matching earrings on for Freddie, Delilah, and Bronte, who we lost Bronte last fall, but at only 10 years old. But I had already started the painting, so she's also now immortalized forever. And so the last painting, I haven't talked about this one, is called Love in the Shade. This is in the same garden. It's called Sherwood Gardens in Baltimore, and they are completely in a shade garden of hostas. And I just wanted to paint these gorgeous colors on the skin, as I always do. But I feel like, and I get a lot of questions about the color, maybe you guys will have some questions, but I use every kind of color because, for one, we're being reflected around, right? You're out in greenery, your skin's going to be more green. You're in front of a blue screen, your skin's going to be blue. But it's more about reflecting that life that we all have coursing inside of us, our passions, our personalities, our history, and that, you know, really is my way of making a figure feel alive on the painting is by using all of these beautiful colors. And what I love about using colors, whether you're a person of color or Caucasian or whatever your background is, I can just throw in more and more colors, and it kind of puts us all more on a level playing field. It takes color out of the equation by adding more color in a way. So that's a general gist. I could talk about like my background or how long I've been painting or all those kind of boring things, but I just wanted to show you and walk you through the room and through this particular set of paintings, which take, the number one question is, how long did that take? This was 1.5 years of work. I do have a full-time job and a kid and, you know, all the things that, it's not like I'm in the studio 8 hours a day every day like I'd like to be. But typically they take 6 months to a year and a half sometimes. Yes, back there. Wait, we want to pass the mic, right? So we have it on for the YouTube recording. Hey, everybody watching on YouTube.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm looking at painting style, which is, you know, very lush, kind of lavish, and I love the description about the use of color on skin, the application, and the cosmic thing over this woman's belly was really cool. You mentioned earliest in your comments that you want to see work like this, or your work, or work, you know, of you know, your friends on museum walls. And how do you purport that to happen? What is your personal agency in that, and how do you conscript other agents in that quest?
Right. Well, I'm still on the quest, but I feel like I'm getting closer and closer. The thing is, you have to be seen by curators. 2 summers ago, I was invited to be in an exhibition. This piece was invited to be in an exhibition at the Virginia Contemporary Museum of Art, and that was my first time on any museum wall in any setting. I was invited. It was a show of all women artists from the DMV area. And I said, wait, I generally send out 1,000 applications and proposals to get my work out. How did you find me in order to just simply invite me, which was like, yes, that's what every artist wants. And they said, well, we put out a call to curators from the major museums in the area, and someone at the Baltimore Museum of Art suggested you and your work. And I said, wait a minute, I didn't even know I was on anyone's radar at the Baltimore Museum of Art. But you never know whose radar you're on. You have to just be out there, right, repeatedly over and over. So that got to be in that exhibition. And this week I got an email from another gallery here in DC, the Hamiltonian Gallery, and they asked me if I might submit some works for potential long-term display in the lobby of the Pew Charitable Trusts. And could I submit, they want some large paintings. This is not guaranteed, but I submitted several of these just yesterday. So I'm hoping, you know, if they select one, now it's in the lobby of the Pew Charitable Trust. Maybe somebody on their board, maybe somebody visiting there will see it and go, huh, I'm a curator, or I know a curator. It's like trying to be a rock star. It's really hard. You've got to get on people's radar. You have to talk, you have to network, you have to show, you have to get the work out there. And that's what I'm doing. And also fingers crossed, and just applying and applying and applying for any opportunities that do already exist that I can openly apply to, but always hoping for that kind of something where someone reaches out and invites me to participate or go to the next step. I do know another artist whose work ended up on a museum wall because a collector purchased it and then donated it. And then once it's donated, it's in that collection at the museum, and there's a route that way sometimes. Great question. I wish I had a real clear answer to. Yeah.
I should know this, but I'm going to ask you the question you think is boring, but where did you study painting?
Oh, okay, great question. I grew up in Baltimore and I studied at Towson University. My mother and my older brother both went to MICA early in their college careers, and sadly neither of them finished their college degree, and so that kind of stuck with me as a kid, a 12, 14-year-old. I was like, I don't know. Something about that doesn't feel right. I'm going to just go to Towson, which luckily a lot of professors at MICA are also adjunct to Towson, so you're getting great teachers in a smaller school. But then I did my MFA at Massachusetts College of Art and Design in a low residency program that landed me in Provincetown. It's like the biggest, gayest artist beach town in America, and if you don't know, it's in Cape Cod. So I got to have a studio there in Cape Cod for a month at a time. September, May, and then in between, because it was a low residency, I could come back to Baltimore and lean on local mentors, which then allowed me to choose Maryland Institute College of Art teachers as mentors. So a unique way, and there's a lot of unique ways to get an MFA these days, but now I've got this great connection in Boston, so I'm in this alumni exhibition next month in Boston at the Mass Art College Gallery.
Bronte died in October 9th.
That's true. That's our baby girl. You just wanted to put a comment in.
Yeah.
Yeah, so our dog here on the far side, Bronte, she died just about a year ago in October. So now she gets to live forever in this painting.
You have a very vibrant and distinctive painting style. How did you develop it? Did you start with much more realistic and then change, or abstract?
Great question. Yes, so that's sort of the thing probably I should have talked about, but I love the question. Thank you. I started out in undergrad being a watercolorist, and I would paint really vibrant nude figures in watercolor, but I got kind of stuck in watercolor. You just put the mark down and you're done. There was no experimentation, there's no taking away, there's no layering. So after college, I started playing with oils, and I painted pears. I wanted to paint, and I could just buy them at the grocery store and put them in every different, and I wanted to paint them like Van Gogh painted them, like Cezanne, like Picasso, like every artist I could imagine, until I kind of found my own feeling for the paint and how I wanted to show color. And then when I moved back into the figure, I wasn't quite maybe as colorful until I saw the work of Xenia Hausner. She's an artist out of Austria who works in Berlin, and I stumbled into an exhibition in Berlin of her work. And I was just blown away because she did this similar thing with all these colors. And this painting here that started it all is basically a composition that I took from her painting called Nachthunger, which is it's her composition. And I put myself and my partner in the same pose, but in our house, in our blankets. And I had been admiring her work and her style so much that my graduate school mentors suggested, well, just do a copy of a painting. I mean, that's how you learn, right? You paint from the masters, typically. So I reinterpreted her work as my work, and then it just moved from there until I really found completely my own voice. But I definitely have to give a nod to Xenia Hausner. And you can check out her work. It's beautiful, too. She came from a theater background also and painted big theater backdrops. And her figures are painted even larger. I like to keep mine right at life size, so we're very approachable and they feel very real. A great question.
The majority of these paintings, if not all, are people you know, or yourself, of course. Yes. So that said, when obviously you know them literally, but do you use photographs for details, or how much of it is just
Yes, I do work from photographs because, the old way of having models sit in front of you, like they get dead face. They're like, I can't sit in this pose anymore. And then the painting of a dead face is terrible.
You can't be sitting in the garden.
Right, so I use a lot of photographs. When it's other people, it's way easier, right? I mean, this face on the right, it sort of captures autumn, but it's not like a photograph of her. It's not perfect. But as soon as it looked good as a painting, I was like, I'm done. That's great. It looks like a painting. No one needs to know she didn't hire me to paint this portrait of her. It doesn't need to be her. But this painting, oh my God. And that one, my own face. I mean, I'm looking in the mirror. I'm taking cell phone selfies. I'm like looking through old photos of my face at different angles. I'm suffering, tortured over getting it right. And of course I keep aging and nobody wants to paint that. And this is sort of us a little bit younger in a way, even like I said, Alexis, who's only 5 in the painting. So I was like, good, I can young us, a bit too. But it's really hard, and I'm done painting me. I'm done. This is it. We've got a couple. I'm moving on to others because it's a lot easier. One little mark when you're painting a portrait, I mean, just the tiniest little mark around the eyes or the mouth just changes your whole expression, your whole character. So this one, I can tell you, I've sanded it off and repainted my own face like 4 times already. So, yeah, it was like 50 according to her, and even her face. Because every time I painted it, like if I put little eyelashes, she suddenly looked 12. I'm like, but then she looks at it and goes, why don't I have any eyelashes? I'm like, because you look 12. I had to take them out, I had to change them, and then I had to put the face paint on, and that solved the problem. But it's hard to be a painter. It's not as easy as it looks, or as easy as you might think that we experience. It's not easy. I'm not a formula painter, like just knocking them out one after another. They all take a lot of work. And because, in a way, they take so much time, then my mind changes as I'm painting it, like, oh, let me add this whole other thing, or this other color, or like with that one, those little flowers, because the time changed, and I experienced something different in the length of time it took to make the painting.
And one more question, if I may. When you first have a blank canvas before you, and you have an idea of what you're wanting to achieve, do you start with a sketch with, how does that first, how's it start?
I should post maybe some more in progress works. But this, in the beginning, I work in acrylic, and this was a massive orange tree. I just used like a rust burnty orange color, and I just painted the tree shape in and kind of where the figures were gonna be. And then worked from there, like, okay, let me work on the dogs. Then they were easy, you know, again, it's like it's like not my face. It's a quick, easy capture. But then everything else just took layering and layering and glazing and sanding and glazing and layering. But it all starts in acrylic for the first couple weeks. You know, I use charcoal, maybe if I'm gonna draw it all. Just a light, you know, that vine charcoal, it just rubs right off if you don't want it to be part of the work anymore. And ladders, of course, lots of ladders to get up and down. And or I just pin it, I work right on the wall with it stapled to the drywall. So I just yank it off and staple it lower and just roll the bottom up. I mean, so for months, the bottom 3 feet were just rolled on the floor while I'm working on the top portion. Over here, Dave has a question.
Could you talk about how you land on a subject, an idea for a painting? You know, what kind of sparks, inspires you?
Thank you. You know, in the beginning, I was looking a lot at other compositions by other painters, especially when it comes to couples, to figure out, like Egon Schiele is a big influence, like how did he pair couples together? But these days it comes to finding models or meeting people or having friends and asking them to pose for me, and I'll shoot probably 300 to 500 photographs in an afternoon and have them inside their house, outside their house, in a public space. And I'll go through all of those photos, most of which are just natural, like, okay, do whatever you're gonna do, be yourselves. And out of those 300 to 500 photos, like 2 will strike me, like compositionally, color, emotion, like, oh, that's the one. That's the one I'm gonna build from. In fact, I have some new ones in the studio right now. And then as I'm building it, I just sketch it onto the canvas. And then as I'm building it, like I said, other ideas and thoughts come to mind. Like the one I'm working on now is a couple who left the country. They moved to Finland and they've been here their whole lives. And in the end, the photo I'm working with is they're sitting in a restaurant in the winter. And inside the restaurant is a beautiful piece of wallpaper with all flowers on it. And outside is a bare tree in front of Baltimore City row homes. And I feel like the composition, the messaging already happening with that bare tree and the indoor flowers and the lighting in this restaurant, I think it's gonna be a good painting. So those things just have to jump out at me, but it takes a lot of different photos and a lot of different looking. But then once I've got kind of a hold of that idea, it's like a seed and it just kind of grows for months at a time.
Do you ever end up like maybe combining like something from one photo and from another?
Yes, for sure, for sure. This one in particular, yeah. There was no purse, there was no scarf. I invented that pattern. I mean, yeah, there were things it needed. She had bare feet. I added her wedding shoes that she wore in our wedding. Like things just, yeah, come back into play as the painting says it needs something, right? Thank you.